What do you make of what we're seeing in LA? Marines being called in, really a really dangerous situation unfolding.
Well, it is exactly that. It's a very dangerous situation unfolding. You can understand Governor Newsom feeling that Trump is trying to provoke a greater crisis there. I mean, this is the governor of the largest state in America, California, who Trump refers to repeatedly in social media as Governor News Scum. So that's, this is what we've got to get our head around. This is a very different kind of president. And yes, there is a real unhappiness about these deportations and, seizing people who are undocumented immigrants and, dragging them off with their kids left at school with no one to pick them up and so forth. It's not the kind of process that you'd expect in a country that we've always understood to be governed by the rule of law. But the concern is, and this is what Governor Newsom said, and I agree with him, the concern is that this is essentially a provocation. So it's, these are dangerous times in America. If you follow the American press and media generally, as I'm sure you do, and most Australians probably do nowadays, there are many people in America now, serious people, experienced people, who are concerned that America is slipping into a sort of a realm of authoritarianism, almost of tyranny, and that should be very concerning for us. So let's hope that common sense and the rule of law prevail.
The Prime Minister will likely meet Donald Trump on the sidelines of the G7. We expect that on Monday next week, our time. Do you think he should make any deal? What are the kind of guardrails around a deal? Because clearly Australia is trying to seek a reduction on tariffs. What should we be willing to negotiate on?
Well, not much, I would say. The tariffs that Trump has imposed on Australia are an affront. I mean, we have a free trade agreement with the United States. They have a very big trade surplus with us. These are the arguments I used some years ago when I did get an exemption from tariffs. Americans couldn't get a better trade deal with anyone than they have with us. Now, one of the problems, Patricia, with Trump, and look, I'm not alone in saying this, is that if you go along and seek to strike a deal with him, how do you know that he will abide by it? I mean, he does not regard his word as his bond, let's face it. Every deal is only good until such time as he decides it's not good. The Canadians and the Mexicans have been subjected to tariffs, all in breach of a free trade agreement Trump himself entered into and signed in his first administration.
So you think that, I wrote down your words, we shouldn't be willing to negotiate on not much. So no. The Prime Minister should be prepared to go into that meeting on the G7 sidelines and walk out without a deal because we should be so cautious about what we're to offer for a reduction in tariffs?
Well, the answer is no deal is better than a bad deal. Mr. Albanese has got to be prepared to actually get on the front foot with Trump and say, for example, we are giving $3 billion with no strings attached to support your submarine industrial base. If you don't remove these tariffs, we will reconsider those payments. We are providing a large base for you entirely at our cost in Western Australia. Again, we will review that. We have a so-called submarine deal with the Americans, and I know we've discussed it before, where it is most unlikely that we'll ever get any submarines. It's such a bad deal. But, that's no excuse for not getting on the front foot. Now, the reality is Trump is alienating so many people, he will want to, I would be surprised if he wants to alienate and pick a fight with Anthony Albanese. I mean, he's picked a fight with Canada, and the only result was that the centre-left Liberal Party made a most amazing political recovery and won the election. And now he's got somebody as Prime Minister of Canada who got elected on an anti-Trump ticket. You know, he's just falling out with the Europeans. It is the only people he seems to be getting along with are dictators. Now, he's got to have some friends in the free world, and I would be surprised, but anything's possible with this guy.
That's right. How about Australia clearly is briefing behind the scenes that it is putting the critical minerals offer on the table. Does that sound, you said no deal is better than a bad deal.
Well,
is that a bad deal if we give them access?
No. Well, I mean, obviously we're not going to give them to it, or we're hopefully not going to give them to him. I mean, the issue with critical minerals is these, so-called rare earths, is that, look, there are plenty of them in Australia, and in fact, they're not that rare, most of them. Most of them are not that rare. The problem is that virtually all of the processing is being done in China. Now, there is one Australian company, Lynas, that does processing in Malaysia, but there have been, there are environmental objections, and it's very hard to get processes of this kind approved in Australia or the United States. But frankly, you can see the leverage China is getting at the moment. I mean, Trump has tried to stand over China, and they have just said, all right, we won't supply these rare earths anymore. And these are essentially to make magnets, without which, frankly, dozens and dozens of American factories will have to close down if those rare earths are no longer, those products of those rare earths, those magnets, are no longer made available. So, in this Trump-Xi tussle, frankly, China has greater leverage. But yes, they definitely need to have a rare earth agenda here. But this has been an issue for a long time. We've known about this for years, and the Americans have talked about it, and Australia has always been prepared to get involved, but the Americans have not been prepared to make the investment to do so. And if they're prepared to do that, I think that would be a fantastic development. And I don't think that would definitely be a win-win for everybody.
That's an interesting point you make. Just a couple of quick ones. Pete Hegseth asked for a 3.5% spending on defence of our GDP. The Prime Minister dismissed the request, said we're a sovereign nation. Was that the right course of action and response from the Prime Minister? And do you think we should be getting to that kind of ambition on defence spending?
Well, look, firstly, I don't think Albanese dismissed it. He just simply made the point that Australia determines how much it spends on defence and what it spends it on. Now, the reality is that we are going to need to spend more on defence, but we've got to be spending it on the right things. And this is another point I made in this essay. America's allies have got to be very careful that if spending more on defence simply means spending more on American supplied defence equipment, that very likely is simply going to be making us more dependent, more reliant on America when America is less dependable and less reliable. And so the critical thing, and Albanese's made this point, and I'm pleased he did, that we should be focusing on the capabilities we need. What do we think we need to defend ourselves with? And that's certainly going to require more money. But we should measure the effort by what we actually get for our money, not by how much we spend. I mean, if you spend 3.5% ineffectively, that could be much worse than spending 2% effectively.